Springbok fans are being priced out of test matches. That is something I'm hearing more and more from Bok fans. And in this episode, you are going to get a front row seat to the prices we pay and the fairness or unfairness of it all. Now, for starters, you can actually go and watch the Springboks for as low as 250 Rand for a ticket.
Marks tucked in at the back, waiting for that forward momentum, which they get now as they splinter away.
For context, that was more or less what you also paid for a ticket to go to the 1995 Rugby World Cup final. Of course, in 2025, the 250 Rand tickets are in the upper tier corners, mostly, aka the nosebleed seats. And that's if the match you're attending even has tickets for 250 Rand. At the high end, you could be looking at 3,000 Rand. Of course, there are variations. So, for example, if you'd like to go watch the world champions take on Australia in the upcoming Rugby Championship, the cheapest ticket will set you back 525 Rand, which, to be honest, is probably not that bad when you compare it to global sporting ticket prices. But that in itself is a flawed argument, and I'll explain why in a moment. SARU President Mark Alexander has said previously that they are trying to keep Bok Test tickets as affordable as possible. He said, rugby test matches in South Africa remain among the most affordable top-tier sporting events, especially when compared to global tournaments with significant operational costs. While other major international sporting events carry premium pricing, South African rugby continues to prioritize accessibility for fans. To his credit, Alexander is not naive to the realities of South Africa's economic situation. He accepts most South African households don't have much disposable income and recognizes the fact that the Springboks are now regarded as a team of the people. He says, that's why there is a sliding scale in the way prices are set. People want a winning team, and then come the win bonuses. When the money comes in one door, it goes out the next. It's an ongoing battle. The minute you open a 50,000-seater stadium, there are security requirements you have to adhere to. You pay for the visiting team and the assembly of our players. A lot of our players come from outside the country. We have to ensure that there is insurance to cover them if something happens to them. Now look, I do think that SARU find themselves in a difficult juggling act. They need to generate income, which is used not only for salaries, insurance, and the like, but also to plow back into the game at grassroots level for development purposes. And given how successful and popular the Springboks are right now, you could say they need to strike while the iron is hot. And they've largely done that, to be fair to them. When you look at the commercial deals they've signed with existing and new sponsors, we obviously know about FNB, Pick n Pay, Fly, Safair, Hyundai and Coca-Cola. But there are also deals with Omo and Freddie Hirsch, for example, the latter being the Springboks' official braai partner. If you're into marketing, advertising and sponsorship stuff, you might think there's an element of silliness there. But while that may be the case, the reality is that it's a masterstroke. South Africans love the Springboks, and South Africans love braaiing. So it only makes sense the Boks should have a braai partner. In fact, the Boks are now the most valuable commercial brand in South Africa. They've overtaken Kaizer Chiefs. Decades ago, that would have been unthinkable. So no one can accuse SARU of not maximizing revenue here. They've also recently opened the first ever Springbok store at Sandton Mall. And there are also the TV deals, which is usually where the biggest chunk of the revenue comes from. So to that end, you might say ticket income is a relative pittance. And it's a fine line SARU have to tread. I've indicated before in a previous video that in comparison to a citizen of the United Kingdom, the average South African is about 8 times worse off economically. So you cannot compare it, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, and indeed as Mark Alexander alluded to. For example, in 2012, I attended a cricket test match at Lord's, and it cost me £90 for my ticket. A week later, I was at an English Premier League football match, and that cost me £61. £151 at the time was about 3,500 rand. Fast forward 13 years, and that is still asking a lot for the average South African. That is the real economic reality. And then multiply that by 2, because you're probably taking your wife or your girlfriend with you. Or times it by 4, because it might be the case that you're taking the wife and kids. And we're not even talking yet about drinks and snacks and who knows whatever else you might be purchasing while at the game. The last time I attended a rugby match, as it turns out, was in April at the Cape Town Stadium. I watched the Stormers against Connacht in the URC. And after the match, I went to the shop and I bought myself a Stormers hoodie. Yeah, you can think for yourself what the price of that was. And, as Alexander clearly knows, it becomes unaffordable for most South Africans. And so the balancing act is between maximizing the commercial potential of the Springboks and ensuring the fans are still able to afford the tickets. And judging by the attendances of the matches so far this year, SARU can turn around and say there are enough people willing to pay those prices, which obviously does not bode well for those who cannot afford it. Something I would like to see is more Springbok rugby televised on SABC. If you're the same age as me, you'll remember in the early 90s, SABC showed everything. I remember on a Saturday morning, there was an NBA show of all things. But there was also Currie Cup rugby, domestic football, local cricket. Remember the Benson and Hedges night series, Formula One, tennis, Grand Slams like Roland Garros and Wimbledon, golf majors like the Open Championship, and the Olympic Games. That exposure to a mass audience is what makes SABC special. Or some might say it's the only thing that makes them relevant. Either way, we need the Springboks on SABC, guys. To give you an idea, when both channels show a Bok match, SABC's viewership is about 5 times that of SuperSport, sometimes even more. That is invaluable in terms of exposure and helping to grow the sport. And it also ensures brand visibility. Recently, we saw SABC also show a Springbok Test match, and they're trying to sell it as being in honor of the 30-year anniversary of the Boks winning the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Okay, sure, if you say so. But those eyeballs are priceless. And you can just imagine how many kids would watch it, see our world champions in action, and then go outside, play in the backyard or the street or the park, and you'll hear things like, "I'm Siya Kolisi, I'm Eben Etzebeth, I'm Peter Steph du Toit." That is the value of free-to-air television coverage. But it also counts for nothing if those same kids and indeed adults will never be able to go to the stadium to watch their heroes in action. But what do you think? Do you agree Bok tickets have become too expensive? Or do you think we're lucky that they're not even higher, and those who don't like it should just get on with it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, why not help me out with a super thanks? That's the heart button with the $ inside of it. You'll be able to make a highlighted comment. I'll hit the love button on your comment, and I promise to reply too. You'll also have the opportunity to make a small donation to my channel. It's whatever you want it to be. It can be 10 Rand or 10,000 Rand. The reason I'm asking for your help is because I would love to do this full time. I would also love to go to Australia in 2027 and cover the Rugby World Cup for you from down under with daily coverage. But I'll need your help to make it happen. Whatever you're willing to contribute, I'll be very, very grateful. And if you used to work at Eskom and you got a lacquer payout, then I'm counting on you to do the right thing. If you're not yet ready to support me in that manner, you can also just spear tackle the like button, and you can also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And since we're on the topic, I did an even more detailed deep dive into Springbok Test match tickets, where I actually discussed the differences in spending power between the average South African and average Brit. It's on your screen over here. And if you've already seen it, may I recommend this retro review of our 1995 Rugby World Cup heroes. Take a trip down memory lane with me on what was a very special time for our boys. That video's over here, and I'll see you next time.